In today's video, I want to talk about free motion quilting designs and choosing a thread color. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I'm going to be talking about this quilt, which is one I made for the Island Boutique Ambassador Challenge for April 2025. And this quilt is called Modern Curves. It's actually a pattern I designed for the Quilter's Way, my private online membership. And I thought it would be perfect for this challenge, which was actually to use Drunkard's Path blocks. Yes, I know, the dreaded curved piecing, all right? So you can see the Drunkard's Path block here. You've got the color in the quarter circle, and then I chose a black background. Yes, a bit of a daring choice, right? But I love how these bright fabrics pop right off that black background, so I was really happy with the result. Now, what I wasn't so happy about was having to think about what thread to use on this project. So I went with a dark gray. I'm going to talk about that in more detail, but it's a real challenge when you have such a contrast between your background and the other parts of the quilt to make sure that your quilting supports the quilt design and doesn't take it over. All right, and I'm going to talk about some of the thinking I went through when I chose the thread for this particular quilt. So let's take a closer look at the designs I used, and also, as I said, I'm going to talk about my thread choices and kind of what was going through my head when I had to make that decision. Now, before I get into the quilting, I want to say thank you to Island Boutique for providing me with the fabrics I used to create Modern Curves, and also a big thank you to their sponsors for providing me with the items I used to complete the quilt. Now, I used walking foot quilting, decorative stitches, and free motion quilting when I quilted Modern Curves. And I started near the center with the idea of framing this center yellow circle. So what I did is I took my walking foot and I just did straight line stitching all the way around. I did 4 different lines of straight line stitching to form this frame. And then when I looked at it, I went, those single lines just weren't doing it for me, okay? I needed to do more than that. So I put a second line, a 1/4 inch away from each of those 4 lines, and that worked out so much better. But of course I had lots of spaces in between too, right? And I couldn't just leave them blank. You see, I left this one blank to give us a bit of a space. But I went back and I filled in the outer one with a serpentine stitch, so a decorative stitch on my Janome CM17 machine. And I came in here and used another decorative stitch. Looks like little waves, or to me it looks like little cursive C's in here. And then I left this blank. And I think that works really well. And I'll tell you, that was not how I wanted to quilt this initially. But you know, when you're quilting and sometimes you're a little tired and you kind of forget what you were going to do, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do the serpentine stitch here. That was great. But I wanted to do this little shape here, and then do another serpentine stitch in there. But for some reason, I just went right to the inner border and did the stitch I didn't want to do. But that's okay, because it turned out just fine. I quite like how it turned out. So happy accident, I guess, right? So that's some of the walking foot quilting I did on this. And I did the same kind of thing in the borders here too. As you can see here, I've just got straight line stitching and use that serpentine stitch in there. I kept it very simple. All right. Then there is lots of free motion quilting going on in here too. So you can see in the center here, I've got this swirl, okay? So these swirls are not, the stitching is not back on itself. I purposely left this channel in all of them. And these just look like little swirls kind of here. What I wanted them to actually look like is what you see up here. Hopefully you can see these because it's a little difficult to see them, but when you bring them together and they meet or almost meet, they look like a little heart. And that was kind of my intention. Works okay in the center, but all the other areas as I go around have these little hearts in them. And then I just quilted some wedges. And I actually did these just freehand, okay? Could have used a ruler, but I didn't. I just did them freehand. They worked out okay. Continuing with these swirls, I did these in the corner, again, all freehand. So just coming along with them and just filling in this black area there. And again, you have a swirl here and some more wedges. So basically swirls and wedges were happening in a lot of these quarter circles. And then I have all this area here to fill in with some kind of a background filler, right? I went with my E's and 3's that I like to use. And that works really well as a background filler. I didn't want anything super dense, but I wanted to keep this kind of filigree, kind of scrolly look that was going with the swirl. So I think it worked out really well. Now let's talk about the thread I use. So when you look at this now, because you've got this black and you've got all these bright colors, when you look at the black, this almost looks like it's, you know, maybe a white thread or just an off-white thread. And actually what it is this thread here, this dark gray. It's a glide thread that I used. And actually, you know, you would kind of think that this is not, you know, it looks pretty dark here and you would think it would be darker on the black. It's not. So it shows the quilting nicely, but it doesn't overpower the quilt, right? And it also works really nicely on all of the colored fabrics. Okay, it blends in nicely. You can see the motifs a little bit, but really it's just giving texture there. So it worked out really well, I thought. You certainly don't want to use anything too much of a contrast with the black or it's just going to scream at you. I first was looking at this variegated thread because I thought, oh, that's really luscious and it picks up all the colors in the fabric collection. However, if I had used this on the black, you would have really seen it. Like it would have been overpowering. And I think you would have seen the quilting more than the design in the quilt. And I wanted to see the design in the quilt. Not to mention it would have shown up more on some colors, less on others. And if you're doing any backtracking, you never want to use a variegated thread. It starts to look, well, it can look anyway, a little muddy. So I didn't want to do that. I was glad I went with the dark gray. I thought about going even darker, maybe a black, but that would have shown up a lot more on these bright fabrics. So I didn't want to do that. So I was pleased with my choice. A little surprised that it showed as much as it did on the black, but I'm good with that. I like that. So that's what I did on this particular project. And I worked on some other projects too for Island Batik, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But before I do, I want to say a big shout out and a thank you to my patchwork pals. Those are people in my YouTube channel membership who help to support my channel with their monthly subscription. So if you'd like to support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel as well, look for the join button below any of my videos. You can click on that, get more details, and even become a patchwork pal today. Now I mentioned that I have done some other projects for Island Batik too, and if you're wondering about those, well, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video here, which has all the information that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.